pay.
That's usually on the way to no. That's usually a way of saying no. So I'm looking for yes.
Senator Hawley, I understand this is not a yes or no answer.
It kind of is, though.
It kind of isn't, because and we were going to sit down with the unions.
You're disappointing me.
Starting in the next few days, sir, we're sitting down with the unions for new contract talks that start actually in 3 days.
One of the most powerful media companies in the world just sat before the United States Senate. They came with answers. The problem, when the real questions started, the answers stopped. Watch carefully.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling this hearing. Welcome to the witnesses. Mr. Sarandos, if I could just start with you. Let's continue to talk a little bit about the labor impacts here, if we could. How many U.S.-based employees does Netflix currently employ, do you know?
About 10,000.
What about in production roles?
Well, it's a fluid number, but we've had about 155,000 production jobs.
How about now?
On our originals. At any given time, I don't know the number exactly, sir. I can follow back with your staff, though.
Warner Brothers, how many U.S. production jobs?
I don't have the exact number, but it would be, I would think, in the 8,000 range.
Okay. Here's my question. If this merger goes through, what's your projection about the amount of domestic production, say 2 years from now? Is it going to be static? Is it going to decline?
It's going to. Our production is going to increase.
Domestic production.
Domestic production
Employment.
is going to increase. Most of our production is domestic, and it will continue to increase. We've recently forecast our content spend, independent of this deal, to grow to $20 billion. And that's a combination of licensing, producing. Now, those licensing dollars compel production as well. That's why it's hard to get an exact number.
Let me show you the data here about U.S. production recently.
Yeah.
It's the red line here, starting from in 2021. You can see it is pretty much straight downward. There's been massive shift in production, as I think as Senator Schiff was alluding to just a moment ago, massive shift in production overseas to other foreign jurisdictions, leaving the United States. So will you commit to increasing domestic United States production and domestic United States production jobs? Did I hear you just say you would?
Senator Hawley, absolutely. It's in our business plan. It's in our long-term operating DNA. I will point out, sir, respectfully, that chart is Los Angeles.
Yeah, but it is Los Angeles, but if you look at the data, it is reflective. This reflects all of U.S. production. U.S. production is not going up, right?
But some of these jobs have moved.
It's going down.
Some of these jobs have moved to
Yeah,
New
but the
Jersey.
overall numbers are going down, and this is exactly the concern of labor. And without objection, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into a statement for the record from the Teamsters, who have major concerns about this deal, as does, frankly, pretty much every segment of labor, Mr. Sarandos. And what they all say is they're worried that you're going to cut residuals, which is effectively payments. You're going to cut production jobs. So let's just go through a few commitments here. Will you commit to using union labor for all domestic shoots?
We do use union labor.
Will you commit to using it in the future for all of your domestic shoots, if this deal goes through?
Senator Hawley, we do use, this is the most unionized industry in America, and we use union labor on all our production.
And you're going forward. I'm looking for a commitment.
You have my commitment.
Will you commit to a 45-day or longer theatrical release window for major Warner Brothers films?
Senator Hawley, I just said that I would do that under oath, so yes.
Good. And will you commit to fairly compensating your workers in the industry with residual payments?
Well, top of market payment has been Netflix's business philosophy since we started operating over 25 years
listen,
ago.
what you have been routinely accused of compressing and reducing residuals, it's one of the biggest objections to labor.
That phrase, complicated answer, is one of the most rehearsed deflections in corporate testimony. What just happened here is not a miscommunication. A senator asked a direct question about worker pay. The CEO of a $300 billion streaming giant answered with contract negotiation timelines. That is not an accident. That is a strategy. Residuals are how tens of thousands of working-class crew members, editors, and writers survive between jobs. When a company this size calls that complicated, what they mean is, we have already decided, and we are not telling you yet. Drop your take below. Is this a yes or a no?
Rid of this deal. So let's see if you can lay that to rest today. Will you commit to full residuals?
Senator Hawley, I would like to tell you this is a very complicated answer because we prepay.
That's usually on the way to no. That's usually a way of saying no. So I'm looking for yes.
Senator Hawley, I understand this is not a yes or no answer.
It kind of is, though.
It kind of isn't, because and we were going to sit down with the unions.
You're disappointing me.
Starting in the next few days, sir, we're sitting down with the unions for new contract talks that start actually in 3 days.
That's a complicated, long no. I would really hope it would be yes.
Okay. Are you asking me to commit to residuals in the traditional form, because I don't think that applies in many cases. That's why I'm getting there.
All right. Well, I think you've got some work to do on that, Mr. Sarandos, and I would hope that you'd reconsider your position. Before my time expires, I want to ask you about something else related to children. Why is it that so much of Netflix content for children promotes a transgender ideology? Almost half of your content for children, I'm talking about minor children now, I'm not talking about teenagers, minor children, promotes a transgender ideology agenda. I was just looking at the data here from your various series. And what concerns me is just 2 days ago, a jury in New York awarded a former transitioner $2 million because she said that her psychologists and others pressured her into, they pushed on her an ideology that proved to be extremely detrimental. I'm sure you know that in the UK, the National Health Service in the UK has said that they're not going to perform transgender surgeries or any longer so-called gender-affirming care for minors, including in counseling, because it is so incredibly detrimental. Our own HHS has come forward with similar findings this past year, yet if you turn on Netflix, you'll find that an enormous amount, and I say this as a parent with 3 young children, an enormous amount of your children's programming has this ideology and agenda in it. Is this an advocacy position for Netflix? Is this an ideological commitment you have? I mean, why is this?
Senator Hawley, Netflix has no political agenda of any kind. I would tell you that.
Well, then why is your children's program so full of this highly sexualized, highly controversial agenda? I don't understand it. It seems strange to me.
Respectfully, sir, it's because it's inaccurate. We have millions of hours of children's programming.
You're saying it's not there. You don't have trans. You don't feature trans characters, trans storylines, trans themes. It's not in your programming.
I'm saying we feature a wide variety of stories and programs to meet a wide variety of people's tastes.
Why is almost half of it? Why does almost half of your children's program feature this highly controversial, highly sexualized material? That just seems strange to me. It can't possibly be a reflection of the population.
Senator Hawley, I don't have any idea where that number would come from or what that would be. I don't believe that's been your personal experience, but I can't speak to that.
Well, what do you mean you don't think it's been my personal experience? You don't think that I monitor what my children watch on your... Here's what I tell you what my personal experience is since you bring it up. My personal experience is that my 3 children, I can't let them watch anything they want on Netflix. I can't let them watch anything on Netflix unless I preview it, because I don't have confidence in what's on your platform. I don't know what they're going to encounter, and I tell you what, I don't want my kids being pushed an agenda about their sexuality or gender identity when I have not had the opportunity first to discuss it with them and to form them in that. And frankly, on behalf of parents around the country, it offends me that Netflix is pushing this content at parents in what seems to be a very coordinated, thought through, planned out agenda in a way that, frankly, I think undermines parents, certainly undermines me and my wife. We have to watch every show beforehand before we can let our kids watch it. Now, I don't know. That seems pretty concerning to me. I know you make a gob of money on it, and maybe that's the answer. But it just seems to me that it's a disservice to the parents of this country, particularly given what's happening with our youth on this subject.
Senator, if I may answer, like I said, we have millions of hours of content on Netflix at any given time. We have state-of-the-art tools for you to manage those choices for your children and to block any title that you might be offended by for any reason. So we are parents at Netflix as well. We share all your concerns about raising kids and also the ability to raise them as you see fit in your household and anyone else's household as well.
My concern is that you don't share my values or those of many other American parents, and you want the United States government to allow you to become one of the largest, if not the largest, streaming monopolist in the world. I think we ought to be concerned about what content you're promoting.
What you just watched was not a hearing about a merger. It was a pressure test, and the cracks showed exactly where they were always going to show. Start with the labor exchange. Sarandos walked into that room with a promise: domestic production will increase. He said it with confidence. Hawley put a chart on the record, a red line, straight down, since 2021. And instead of engaging the data, the CEO's first instinct was to reframe it. That's Los Angeles specifically. That is the tell. When someone with a $300 billion platform is confronted with a downward trend, and their first move is to narrow the frame, they are not disputing the data. They are managing it. The jobs conversation was never going to be the headline. But it should have been. Because here is what nobody is asking. If domestic production is already declining before this merger is approved, what does the trajectory look like after the deal closes, and the incentive to maintain those jobs gets absorbed into a combined entity, with even more leverage over every union at the table? The Teamsters submitted a statement for the record opposing this deal. So did virtually every major labor segment in the entertainment industry. That is not a partisan coalition. That is electricians, drivers, editors, makeup artists, sound technicians. People who do not appear on camera and do not make the news cycle, but whose entire financial survival is structured around the residual system that Sarandos just called complicated. Think about what this means if you are sitting on the other side of this. You are a grip on a Netflix original. You hear the CEO of the company that employs you testify under oath that residuals are a very complicated answer. You hear him say that contract talks start in 3 days. You hear a senator say, out loud, on the record, that's a complicated long no. And nobody corrects it, because it isn't wrong. Now the content question. This is where the hearing shifted register entirely. Hawley's challenge about transgender content in children's programming will be covered by some outlets as a culture war moment. That framing is a distraction. What actually happened in that exchange was more structurally significant. A senator made a specific statistical claim. Almost half of Netflix children's programming features transgender ideology. Sarandos's response was not a rebuttal with data. His response was, I don't have any idea where that number would come from. That is not a denial. That is an absence of a denial. If the number were clearly false, the response from a prepared CEO testifying before the Senate would be a prepared counter-statistic. It was not. What followed was a pivot to parental controls and a reminder that Netflix employees are parents too. That answer was designed to close the emotional temperature of the room, not to answer the question. Supporters of Netflix's programming philosophy will argue, and they are not entirely wrong, that representation in children's media reflects a real segment of the population and that families who want those stories should have access to them. That is a coherent position. It is also a position that becomes harder to hold when it is presented not as a choice but as a default, when a parent says they cannot let their child browse freely without preview, and the corporate response is, we have tools for you to block content. The tools for blocking argument implicitly concedes the original point. If the content were not pervasive, the blocking tools would not be the answer. Critics will argue that Hawley's framing weaponizes parental anxiety to score political points ahead of a midterm cycle. There is something to that. The almost half figure was not sourced live. The moral framing, it offends me, it undermines me and my wife, was calibrated for a specific audience and a specific news clip. But both things can be true simultaneously. A senator can be performing for cameras and also be raising a question that is genuinely unresolved. The question of how much ideological weight children's entertainment is carrying, and who decided that, is not a fringe question. It is a question that a growing share of American parents across political lines are asking out loud. Why now? That is the question. This hearing is nominally about a merger, but the timing places it inside a broader political moment where the entertainment industry's relationship with its audience is under more scrutiny than it has been in decades. Streaming fragmented the gatekeeping function that broadcast standards once performed. What replaced it was algorithmic curation, studio ideology, and a subscriber model that rewards engagement over consensus. Netflix is not uniquely responsible for that shift, but it is the largest player in the space, and the merger on the table would make it larger still. Here is the historical parallel worth considering. When the major broadcast networks consolidated in the 1990s, the public interest commitments extracted during those regulatory approvals were real, but largely unenforceable. 10 years later, most of them existed only on paper. The commitments Sarandos made in this room today, union labor, theatrical windows, domestic production increases, are the same category of commitment. They are real in this moment. Their durability depends entirely on whether anyone is still watching. If this is the analysis you are not finding anywhere else, you already know what to do. The story does not end here. Contract talks begin in 3 days. The merger review continues. And a CEO who testified under oath that domestic jobs will increase is now on the record. Whether that record is enforced or quietly filed away is a choice that gets made in the next 18 months, mostly out of public view. The final frame of this hearing was a senator telling a streaming executive that he should not be allowed to become the largest monopolist in the world if his values are not aligned with American parents. Sarandos did not answer that. He let the clock run out. That silence is the part of this story that is not finished. Thanks for watching. If this breakdown gave you something the headlines didn't, share it with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop your take in the comments, because on this one the conversation is just getting started.